Welcome back, Honors. Welcome back to it. Welcome back to your flip classroom in our... Oh, wow. Ooh, squeak. Oh, that wasn't very, very flattering. But anyway, welcome back to your flip classroom and our continuing discussion of these historical parallels that are going on right now, right? We are starting, of course, our new unit on the Middle Ages, but right now we haven't even really got into the Western Middle Ages yet because we've kind of been stonewalled by the fact that we got to be good historians out there, we got to be good historical learners, and we got to remember that there's a lot of stuff going on at the exact same time, right? And so really, really quickly, I'm going to clip in a little old flip right now that's going to like show you the wrapping of the Byzantine, but I'll be right back, okay? So don't go anywhere. I'll see y'all in a second. Kings are going to try and raid different parts of Constantinople at different points, and they're going to siege the city in massive waves of attack, right? So the thing about it, though, going forward as well, is they're also going to be weakened by a religious movement that happened underneath them, right? Now, it's a very interesting thing because today the church is much stronger because of this movement and stuff like that, but a massive event in 1053 went down known as the Great Schism, right? So the Great Schism is going to be an event that happened in the Byzantine Empire that's very important, and as they're getting weaker and stuff, this event is going to change the landscape of Christianity forever. And it's very important that you know it. And you're not only going to learn about it in my class, you're going to learn about it in Mr. Mathern's class, right? And the church in the Byzantine Empire that was the original Christian church, just the original church that was just like Christianity, one church, one thing, is going to split into two new churches, known as an Eastern church and a Western church after Justinian. And it's mostly due to the differences in worship across the empire, right? And it's what leads to these two churches being called the Roman Catholic Church, because it moved over here to what is now Rome in the modern day era, and that's why St. Peter's is located in Rome, and the Roman Catholic Church is known as the Roman Catholic Church, and the other one is known as the Eastern Orthodox Church, right? And Eastern Orthodoxy is very, very different. This right here is the Greek Orthodox Church that is actually located at the top of City Park in New Orleans, right? So we even have Orthodox churches inside of our own city, right? And the big thing about it, though, is why did they split? Some of you are like, Mr. Terry, I like what you're getting at. I like that you're telling me where Catholicism comes from, and I love that you're talking about the Eastern Orthodox Church as well. But where did these disagreements come from? Why did they split? It's a really, really That's a really, really great question there, Chapman. I like that question. That's good stuff, right? Well, the thing about it is because of bread, popes, the sun, and some images, right? So the real thing about it that you need to understand is I actually went off and commissioned a very nice guy to text me and tell me what actually went down in this. As you can see, this is Mr. Mathern right here, and I texted him and I was like, what are the disagreements that led to the East-West Schism, big fella? And he told me all of this stuff right here, and we just kind of whittled it down into a few causes. Because like I said, you're going to talk about it in his class a little bit again as well, right? So going into it, though, as we all know, Mr. Mathern, just what an absolute godsend. I know. What a good guy. So the big thing about it that he told me in this text message, though, is that actually the biggest disagreements between the Eastern Orthodox and the Roman Catholics was the fact that actually, one, bread. Leavened versus unleavened, right? The Catholics believe that bread should be taken in unleavened form, or the thin pieces of the host that y'all actually have at Mass. And then also the Eastern Orthodox were like, no, leavened bread is fine, and they actually soaked it in wine, actually, before they take their Eucharist, right? Popes, the Eastern Orthodox doesn't like popes, the Roman Catholics did, right? The Son is this thing called the Filioque controversy, right? Whereas, for example, Catholics say in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Eastern Orthodoxy does not say that. And also imagery as well, because Eastern Orthodox people believe that you have to be very careful about the number of images and icons you use inside of a church, right? So the big thing about it, though, is even after all these big events, after being attacked, after Justinian, after Constantine, after all that stuff, the Byzantine is going to begin to fall, right? They're going to fall towards the end of the medieval period, and their fall marks the end of the medieval period, actually. The Crusades that started in 1090 are going to dramatically weaken the Byzantine Empire, right? And we'll talk more about Crusades and stuff like that as well when we get into what's going on in medieval Europe. But that's going to leave them super, super weak, as you can tell, as the Crusades pass through Constantinople and were tried to being fought over the Holy Land down here, known as Jerusalem. It's going to leave the Byzantine Empire very, very weak. Constantinople, though, is also going to fall in 1453 AD to the hands of these people known as the Ottoman Turks, right? And they're going to be turned into what's known as the Ottoman Empire. Today, after it fell, right, the name was changed to Istanbul. So Constantinople, after it fell in 1453, was no longer called Constantinople. It's now called Istanbul, right? And it's the capital of a country known as Turkey, because it was taken over by the Ottoman Turks, right? So looking into it, though, that is the Byzantine Empire. That is the reign that was the Byzantine Empire. And when we get back to class on Monday and Tuesday, we will be talking about the Eastern Golden Age. So I'll see y'all then. Y'all have a good one. All right, exactly. Thank you very much, Mr. Terry Me from like last year. But the big thing about it though is we also got to talk about a couple of more parallels that are going on at the exact same time, right? So after we talked about the Byzantine Empire, we need to know kind of where it's located, and we need to know also what's going on either side of it, okay? So looking at this world map really quick, if we are looking at the world, the globe, the entirety of like world history rather than Western civilization's history, from the years of about 500 to 1500 AD, we need to understand that there's a lot of stuff going on. The one big problem about learning Western civilization's history is that we tend to get very myopic from time to time. Now, myopathy or myopia, myopic means that we are like focusing way too much on one place. And a lot of this coursework and a lot of this course material tends to focus on Europeans and the impacts that they had on other people, right? Well, the thing about it is Europeans are culturally homogenous, right? And they are, of course, going to have major impacts on the rest of the world. But the big thing about it that we need to understand is that during this time period where they were going through their trials and tribulations of a dark age, quote unquote, yes, it's not really a dark age. I'm very, very aware. Any medieval historian that's watching this right now, preparing to leave me some angry comment. All right, so big thing that we need to understand though is from the years of 500 to 1500 AD, some people were actually having a golden age, while the Middle Ages was actually really, really rough for Western Europeans. Now, when we're looking at this world map though, we can kind of go ahead and negate these two places. Okay, there are things happening. There are things going on. The Aztecs and the Mayas and the Incas are beginning to establish themselves and things like that during this time period. But what we need to understand more than anything else is that as of right now, there's not a ton of recorded history from these two continents right there. Not a lot of stuff going on that we can actually kind of look at and really use as concrete evidence, right? But we can focus on this half of the world real quick. And from the years of 500 to 1500 AD, you got three different things going on all at the exact same time, right? Now, in this area, which is the former western half of the Roman Empire, you have what's called the Middle Ages going on from the 500 to 1500 AD, right? That transitional time period between ancient stuff and modern stuff, right? And that middle is going to be between it. So we got the ancient time periods with Greece and Rome. You got the modern era starting with the Renaissance. The Middle Ages are that like big chunk of time, that 1,000 years chunk of time there in the middle. Now we just got done talking about these guys. That's the Byzantine Empire, right? The Byzantine Empire, aka the former eastern half of Rome. And if you walked up to one of them and asked where they're from, they would say, I am Roman. Now the thing that we need to focus on though right now is what's going on in this other big chunk over here. And well, that's none other than this thing that we like to refer to sometimes as the Eastern Golden Age and or the monsoon marketplace, right? So something that we need to understand that's going on in this world is that during this time period from about 500 to 1500 AD, during this time period, Europeans, yes, they were struggling, y'all. Gonna really have some like struggles. They're gonna have barbarian tribes resettle the rest of the entire continent of Europe. The Catholic Church is gonna grow really powerful and get kind of corrupt and stuff like that as time goes on. But the other big thing that's gonna go on in the eastern half of the world is they're going to have a golden age, right? And some historians and some people who teach history tend to sometimes also refer to this as that monsoon marketplace, right? So most of the eastern kingdoms that you see circled inside of this big like area, this big frame or whatever on this map, you've got people like the eastern coast of Africa, you've got the Arabic kingdoms and the Southeast Asians. When we're looking at them, they're actually having a very, very profitable and very, very big like actual golden age that takes place mostly in the Indian Ocean. Now the thing about it that is the key waterway that all these different areas share, is that Indian Ocean. Now the key thing that we also need to understand though too is looking at that nickname for this area, the monsoon marketplace, that tells us two things. One, marketplace delineates the idea that they're making some money, right? Okay, something we need to understand about golden ages is that you have to understand is that like golden ages typically come off high economic times, right? Periods of high economic gain where people are making lots of money and doing very, very well for themselves. Now the monsoon marketplace, right, is awesome, but what about that word monsoon, right? Marketplace tells us they're making money, but what does that word monsoon mean, right? Monsoon actually, a lot of people think it means rain, right? A lot of people think it means rain because they might have seen Forrest Gump before and seen like the footage of him in Vietnam, and like of course he's like, it's a big old fat rain. But like the thing about that we need to understand when we're getting at this is monsoons cause rain, but they are not actually rain themselves. What monsoons are actually seasonal winds that change direction about every 6 months, especially like taking hold in the Indian Ocean, Southeast Asia, Arabic kingdoms, and also Eastern Africa, right? Now these monsoons though, these seasonal winds do tend to cause massive rainstorms and stuff like that, leading to a wet and a dry season. But I want you to think for a hot second that you're an individual that lives in one of these kingdoms from about the years of 500 to 1500 AD. How could you use these winds to move across this water and make tons and tons of money? Well, the thing about it is that since they change direction every single like basically 6 months, is the people that lived in the areas that bordered the Indian Ocean would spend 6 months bouncing from one place to the other as the winds blew like westward. And then after the next 6 months, after they traded a lot of different stuff, picked up a lot of new items, made a lot of money, they would then travel back, right? Making a ton of money for their civilizations and leading to the progression of sciences, learnedness, and is also leading to their golden age, right? So something that we need to understand, though, is who are these people that are making tons and tons of money during this time period? Well, we have three particular groups of people that are making large advancements and also large sums of cash during this time period. They being the African kingdoms, the Asiatic kingdoms, and the Arabic kingdoms, right? So when we're looking at the African kingdoms, we need to focus on the things that all these people were trading, because the Africans had certain items that the Asians didn't have, the Asians had certain items that the Arabics and Africans didn't have, and we've actually found evidence of Asiatic items in like places like Ethiopia. Chinese porcelain has been discovered in Ethiopia that was being traded around this time, right? So the African kingdoms would provide lots of different things. Particularly, they would provide these three items, right? Salt, gold, and silver. Now, gold and silver, obvious why you would want those things. They're the basis of most currencies. But the thing about salt, right? Why was salt worth so much money, and why were Asiatic people and Arabic people so willing to try and grab a hold of this stuff? Well, the thing about it that you need to understand is salt was actually, at the time, worth its weight in gold, because it can be used both as a preservative, right, to preserve your food and things like that, and also because if you don't have any salt in your diet, you're going to die, because it actually helps you regulate your fluid balance within your cells and also the fluid balance within your entire body. So salt was a very, very major thing. Now, if we actually look at the African kingdoms as well, you have to understand the richest man in all of history is actually from one of these African kingdoms during this Eastern Golden Age. So following his conversion to Islam and stuff like that, his name would be none other than Mansa Musa. Write that down. M-A-N-S-A, Mansa Musa, M-U-S-A, right? Mansa Musa was the richest man that history ever knew, and he was an African king, right? And that picture right there of him is actually a picture of him on medieval maps and some other different maps that were actually circulating during the time period, because everybody knew who this guy was, and everybody knew where he was. It's kind of like how everybody knows who Bill Gates is, right? Or everybody knows who Elon Musk is, right? Everybody knew who Mansa Musa was, because he was just that rich, right? And we'll talk about why he was that rich and kind of how he caused inflation in places he traveled to during class, though, okay? But the Asiatic kingdoms, though, are going to be selling some things and trading some things as well, particularly things like silks, spices, and science. Now, really, really quickly, silks and spices, those make a lot of pretty easy sense, right? Silks are a textile that's very, very precious. It's a luxury item. Spices are something that could also be used for preservatives, medicinal qualities, perfumes, and also flavoring food and meat. But science, how do you trade science? No one walks up to somebody and says, hey, I'll buy 6 pieces of science off. That's not really how it works, right? The thing about it, though, is the Asiatic kingdoms weren't selling scientific advancement, but it was culturally diffusing throughout the Indian Ocean during this time period. So scientific advancement hit a very, very high note in the Asiatic kingdoms during this monsoon marketplace period. One of the most famous things they invented during this time period that actually relates to the scientific advancement of the Asiatic kingdoms is around 900 AD during the monsoon marketplace / Eastern Golden Age period. They invented gunpowder. Now, gunpowder would be very, very important, is going to be then used as a military technology and then also in fireworks and performance arts and things like that, right? Now, looking into it, though, that we also need to know, also apparently during the Asiatic kingdom period, they strapped a bunch of them to a chair and tried to shoot a guy into the air, which is really, really awesome, but we'll talk about that in a little bit later on. That's good science when you think about it. Let's throw that guy up there. Now, the other last one, though, are the Arabic kingdoms, right? Now, the Arabic kingdoms, though, by this point in time, by about 610 AD, are going to almost universally convert to Islam, all right? So keep that in the back of your mind, all right? We'll talk about that more as this unit goes on, because we will do a very in-depth discussion about Islam and talk about why that faith is so cool and why it actually relates heavily to Christian and Judaic values, right? So when we're looking at the Arabic kingdoms, though, that had recently converted to Islam, they were responsible for doing a lot of things as well, particularly the development of accounting. They developed and created the number 0. They developed algebra so they could actually figure out how to do works with money and conversions and trade large items throughout this entire area. And then also, they came up with systematic trading, right? Trading that actually would move along certain trade routes and that would actually move more fluidly and more efficiently. And then also, because of this, because they made so much money and wealth, actually, the Muslim kingdoms and the Islamic kingdoms and then also the Arabic kingdoms developed the very first universities. An interesting little fact about this as well is the Arabic kingdoms are actually going to hold on to a lot of the developments that actually fell when Western Rome fell as well. So that Eastern Golden Age is very, very juxtaposed to what's going on in Western Europe, which is known as the Middle Ages, which some people refer to as a dark age, due to the fact that there was limited learning, poor leadership, and pretty bad economics, right? But we're going to talk about where that bias is and a couple other things in class When I see y'all next time, I'll see y'all soon. Have a good one.